Hello and welcome to Tools in the Shed, a podcast powered by CarsGuide, ready to rip into car stuff that has caught our eye this week. I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James, and with me is Deputy News Editor Justin.
Hello.
And key contributor Peter.
Hello.
This week, we're looking at the upcoming Toyota GR Corolla. Everything we know so far on the latest, very tasty installment in the Roller's performance story. We'll discuss a trio of recent entries to the CarsGuide garage, and we'll catch up with the Doge Father, a master cryptocurrency manipulator in this week's MuskWatch. YouTubers, you can jump ahead courtesy of the time codes in the notes below, and you can click on the chapter markers in the timeline. So let's go. First of all, it's a story authored by your good self, Justin, about 2022 Toyota GR Corolla. We knew it was coming, but there have been a couple of surprises that we've learned courtesy of sources inside Japan. Can you give us an update?
Yeah, so obviously GR Corolla is something that's, I guess, a bit of inevitability after GR Yaris came along, and CarsGuide own Andrew Chesterton had a chat with the lead engineer at the launch of the GR Yaris, and they revealed that the 1.6 litre three-cylinder engine in that car was obviously not going to just stay in the GR Yaris. It was going to be applied to other products as well. So the writing was kind of on the wall for GR Corolla at that point in time. But anyway, so we've always assumed that it would just be essentially a carbon copy of the Yaris, but slightly larger. Yeah, some sources from Japan have indicated there's a little bit more spice in the equation. So obviously the GR Yaris makes 200 kilowatts of power and 370 newton meters of torque, which in a small hatch would be absolutely nothing to sneeze at. But apparently Toyota is aiming to raise that to 221 kilowatts. No word on torque yet, but obviously they're looking to clearly position the GR Corolla above the GR Yaris rather than, I guess, kind of below, if you will.
And can I just say, that is just a fraction under 300 horsepower?
Oh, no, from three cylinders. Yeah.
And from a 1.6 three-cylinder.
It's just outrageous. It's
so
unreal.
It's 100 horses a cylinder, basically.
But it's outrageous. Yeah.
And crazy. And, 150 horsepower nearly per litre. So
yeah, I want that. I want that single cylinder version in my lawnmower. Man, that would get the job done.
The thing with the GR Yaris is obviously it's already a fairly high output engine considering what it's working with. So it was already kind of at its limit or close to it. But again, Toyota's allegedly looking to push that a little bit more for the GR Corolla and get that extra 10% out of the engine. So that is a surprise, definitely. But for me, the biggest surprise is this particular report from Japan's actually suggested the GR Corolla will be more affordable than the GR Yaris.
Yeah, priced under the Yaris.
But that's no surprise because it's easier to build, I would imagine.
Okay, that's a good point.
Because the Yaris is a Frankenstein car because you've got TNGA B at the front, TNGA
what a great point.
C at the back. Yeah, like it's like the Escort Cosworth. I mean, all it needs is a longitudinal engine, and you've got the same car basically. Just a little joke
it's a
for
good
the
point,
editor.
actually.
Yeah,
that is a very good point.
And just on your point about it being at the limit, it does not feel stressed at 200 kilowatts. Like it feels like it can bounce off the red line all day, that engine. So, it did on the launch. So because they had us doing handbrake turns around cones and things, and everyone was just foot flat to the floor in first, and the engine just copped it. Like there was, you couldn't even smell oil. Like it was just it feels really bulletproof. And the fact that Toyota is willing to stand behind the same $200 servicing as the Yaris. So I think 220 kilowatts will be very straightforward for the Roller. And I do think it's an easier car to build than the Yaris.
That is such a good point. And I think our source, correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, is Car Sensor. So that's presumably a site that's based in Japan. And they've had a crack at a rendering. Oh no, the rendering comes from Best Car Web.
Which is another Japanese site.
Another Japanese source. And their interpretation of what it might look like, I've got to say, I'm drawn to. I think it looks very good if it ends up looking half as good as that car.
Yeah, and the one thing I'd say about Best Car Web is they're very good with their intel. So usually when they do come up with these kind of renders, they've somehow received the hot tip, and usually they end up being fairly close to reality. Time will tell, obviously, with this one, but it could look something like that for
Some selected leaking, you reckon?
I reckon,
Yeah. And the thing that this will, I mean, we'll touch on it in a minute, but obviously some local competition will come in the face of Civic Type R, Hyundai i30N, and the very soon to arrive GTI Golf. But the thing the Corolla will have is all-wheel drive, and it's a fantastic all-wheel drive system. So that's certainly an ace up the sleeve.
Yeah, definitely. And for that reason, it's kind of almost on the same level, or not even almost, pretty much on the same level as a Golf R, in fact. It goes a step beyond a GTI, certainly in power it will. But yeah, that all-wheel drive ability. And again, it's going to be a manual car too, which Golf R isn't available with anymore. It's DSG only. So it's got a bit of a unique selling point there, I guess.
I would say from a torque perspective, I reckon they'll go for the 400 plus.
I think so too.
Of the Type R. So they're clearly going for Type R here, and saying, "Hey, we can do it without it being butt ugly."
Yeah. So if
I enjoy the offensiveness of the Type R,
or notwithstanding the pricing shenanigans of the first GR Yaris, it's settled at 49,500. And I think the Rally is more expensive.
Yeah.
But if the Corolla, following that logic, the Corolla is less expensive, you've got Type R at 54,990, and you've got i30N at 41,400 for the hatch. So there's a fairly broad kind of spread. And I think we've had a stab at, or we know pricing for the Mark 8 GTI, which is low 50s, 53,100. So there's every chance that this Corolla could come in at a relatively aggressive price.
That's the thing as well. Like considering what it's coming with, if it is under 50, which again, assuming that this alleged positioning in Japan, Corolla below Yaris, carries over to Australia, it's presumably without a performance pack going to start in the mid to high 40s.
Yeah,
which would be stunning. I'll believe it when it happens, but I'd probably think it started with a 5 in reality, but time will tell.
Well, I was convinced that Yaris was going to be over 50. I mean, yes, I was kind of right with the Rally, but I was convinced it was going to be over 50 to get going with. And so I think Toyota's gone out really aggressively on GR pricing to get the brand out there, because I think these cars, even if they make a buck on them, overall, like dealers will make their money because they'll scream otherwise. But even if they make a buck on them, they can then sell $20 body kits on CHRs for $3,000, and that's where they're going to make their money with that whole GR kind of thing.
The power of the GR brand.
Yeah, and of course Supra and GRMN and whatever else comes down the pipe, because they've got that GR line kind of thing happening. They've got to build that brand. They've got to build it quickly. Yeah, and Yaris, Corolla, Supra is doing that, and GR86.
That's really interesting, because I had a theory there for a while. I think it's probably been disproven that BMW with M and Mercedes with AMG, and to a degree Audi with Quattro or Audi Sport or whatever it may be, I thought they were being greedy in that they'd set up something that was rather exclusive and quite exotic when you think about the roots of BMW M in German touring car racing and the M1 and all of those wonderful cars. And it became much more mainstream through M3s and on it went. And then you saw 118Ds with M kits on it, with big rims. You went, I don't know if that's what M's about. And similar sort of scenario with AMG, with Mercedes, so many AMG models and AMG accessories and kits and lines and things being sold. But it is very tempting to spread that brand out. But do you lose some of the purity or the meaning of it in trying to get the dollars in the till?
Well, I think because Toyota's going out hard with GR as the 3-tier brand from the get-go, I think they're just trying to fast forward that. And because Toyota's been so dull, generally speaking, for 2 decades now, because as you were saying before we came on, there were sporty Corollas. There've been sporty Corollas for years.
Totally.
But then they just stopped doing them.
I know. And Akio Toyota has said, we're going to make more exciting cars. So and this is all the fruit of that kind of strategy. But I suppose the thing that when I say my theory was disproved, I thought AMG and M were going to fizzle out, or we're going to lose their charisma because of they were being spread too thin. But that hasn't been the case. So I'm sure Toyota sees a big opportunity. And you're right, Peter. It strikes a chord with me. I'm old enough to kind of always see a bit of the Corolla DNA as being a performance car.
Yeah.
And it was quite confusing when it wasn't. In the, the KE10, the first Corolla was a regular at Bathurst, and it helped establish Toyota in people's consciousness in this country. The other one that came to mind was Maggie Thatcher's son, Mark, the mysterious character who raced a Corolla Levine at Bathurst before he staged his, disappearance. And Toyota Australia with their factory efforts in an AE86 and others. And that's right, the AE86 is a Corolla. And I, for one, had an AE80 twin cam in the late 80s as a company car of all things. And it was just the most fantastic, lightweight, nimble, amazing little hot hatch. So for me, Corolla, there's always a bit of it that is about performance. So it's a return to form as opposed to anything new, I reckon.
But it's a big return to form, because even like the Corolla SX/GTI from the 90s was 100 kilowatts, and that was terribly exciting.
From 1.6 litres.
Yeah. But they were never kind of overdone, were they? They were very very carefully kind of considered cars.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't scare the horses.
No.
People who knew had a great deal of fun in them. So the GR's very in your face.
So that's true. And when you think, okay, GR Supra, GR Yaris, there'll be GR86 and there'll be GR Corolla, that does start to build the portfolio. Yeah. And more to come with GRMN and what have you. It's exciting times, really, in that part of Corolla's lineup. Yeah. Toyota's lineup.
Yeah, last hurrah before everything goes electric. But
That's right.
That's right. Could have been doing this for 20 years and making more money. But anyway.
I mean, to that point, isn't that a little snippet in our story too, Justin, as a closer, that the wagon may be a different approach?
Yeah, so there's going to be a wagon in addition to the hatchback as well. No sedan planned allegedly at the moment. But obviously the assumption was always the wagon was going to be offered with the same engine as the hatch. Logically, that would make sense. But yeah, apparently there are whispers out of Japan that it might actually go a different way and be a hybrid, using the 2-liter engine, which is seen in overseas versions of the Corolla and CHR, I think, as well. But obviously they'll soup it up a bit to make it more of a performance orientated setup.
Is Corolla wagon on a different platform to the sedan and hatch? I'm just wondering, maybe they're going to put the electric motors in the rear wheels and leave the engine running the fronts.
I think that's why off the top of my head, it should be the same. Very similar to the sedan.
TNGA,
at the very least. Yeah. Right. It'll be a TNGA variation, but probably the slightly larger sedan kind of take on things, I would say.
Wow. Toyota getting fully crazy. They've gone from white goods to exciting products.
Well, that's the thing about the Yaris, right? They kept saying, we can't do sports cars without other manufacturers, and then just go, no, we're going to do something completely bananas, completely off. Yeah. Like it's against all of Toyota's manufacturing principles, but they're doing it anyway, which is fantastic.
And the whole vibe, isn't it, was the cooperation with Subaru on 86 and BRZ. Yeah, that's very good. And the cooperation with BMW, collaboration on everything underpinning it with Supra. But this one, wow, you get the vibe that they're really loving it because it's all theirs and it's about the World Rally Championship and people are pumped up about it.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right. Well, that is very good. It'd be great to get people's feedback and what they make of it. You're looking forward to a GR Corolla. Maybe it's on your shopping list. You won't be alone, I dare say. But we will move now to cars that are currently in our garage or ones that we have driven lately. Justin, can I kick off with you, please? You're making an early call here, at least before the show you were. Tell us about it, please.
Yeah, big call perhaps from me, but I think I've spent a couple of days thus far in a car I've been looking forward to driving for over 6 months now. Finally got the chance. And after the first 48 hours, I've got to say it's probably, in my mind at least, a serious contender for car of the year, and that would be the new Kia Sorento. I've got the GT line petrol this week, and it's an absolute knockout, I think.
Right.
In terms of everything you want from a car in that segment, it ticks pretty much every box.
Yep.
Practicality, I think it looks pretty damn good.
Yep.
Feels premium. Obviously, as we know with Kia, you get a 7-year warranty, so that's never going to be really a consideration because that's pretty great.
Yep.
And it's very well packaged. Obviously, you've got 7 seats, so you've got that versatility if you do need it. An adult could even go on the third row. It'll be tight, but it is possible on shorter journeys. I've tried it. It's absolutely doable. But the middle bench, no, maybe not Richard Berry. But the second row does like slide forward to a ridiculous degree. So you can really balance the second and third rows to afford everyone decent leg room. So
yes,
it's stunningly versatile in that way. But yeah, drives pretty well.
Cosmetically,
not the sportiest thing.
Because I think the Sorrento has that little hint of, to my eyes, a bit of Mustang around the back, the separated taillights in that way. What's done cosmetically on the outside to make it stand apart?
Well, obviously, you've got that. So that's a bit of a different look. I just think for a lot of people, they, in their mind, and I guess I was the same as well, you have an idea of what a Kia looks like. And Sorrento kind of blows that expectation away, I think. I mean, you've got that signature element of the tiger nose grille, but it's a much more squared off, aggressive. You got like a mesh insert, so it looks a lot tougher in that regard.
I suppose what I was driving at, is there any GT line stuff? I mean, are there different rims? Is there something wheels, on the body kit that stands it out?
So you get different trims. So like the mesh insert I was talking about is gloss black as an example. The wheels are 20 inches as opposed to obviously smaller further down the range. So you do get some stuff as opposed to maybe some other GT line products from Kia. There isn't as much visual differentiation, I would say. You don't get a different body kit per se. But there are different trim, different wheels. And then obviously inside you get nice things like quilted Napa leather upholstery.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's a proper job, isn't it?
Yeah. Like they've spared no expense in terms of making it feel great inside in particular. And then, you got your soft touch materials around the place as well. Like it doesn't feel cheap, it feels substantial. And then there's no skipping out on standard equipment either. In the GT line, you get heated and cooled front seats, you get heated middle seats, heated steering wheel, massive panoramic sunroof, head-up display, digital instrument cluster, so on and so forth. Like they've thrown the kitchen sink at it. Like it's literally all in there.
Big screen version of the media system, which is just,
that's good. And I love me a cooled seat. I tend to run fairly hot. The thermostat is sometimes faulty. And
me both, brother.
A cooled seat, gee, that's a luxury that I think pays off day to day. I love them.
But then it's also got some like different quirks as well in that multimedia system you were talking about. It's got a quiet mode, so if you did have the kids in the back and they were asleep or trying to go to sleep, that basically kills the speakers in the back, and lowers the volume in the front. So that way, the driver and front passenger, so mum and dad presumably, can still enjoy whatever they're listening to, but then the kids are kind of left to their own, which is pretty cool. And then there's also like a speaking feature. So if the kids were bickering in the back seat or yelling or whatever, and you can't discipline them or whatever, you can just hit this button and it will use the Bluetooth microphones to pick up and amplify your voice and send it through the speakers in the back. So there'll be no missing.
It's the voice of authority. You kids, you kids in the back.
It's also a good thing to not have to talk across the middle row as much as about that kind of, it's a very cool thing.
Particularly if you're driving as well. Like the last thing you want to do is take your eyes off the road and be looking over your shoulder. So I guess that's another way of doing that and projecting your voice.
Or as my father used to say, Carol, hold the wheel while I beat the children.
Wow.
Thankfully, my parents seem completely unaware of this second career of mine. So, hey, I can say what I want about them.
Yes. And I presume, there's got to be a modest or a serious premium in terms of what you're asked to pay for this, Justin, just to put you on the spot.
Yeah, so it's just over $60,000 for the GT line. Obviously, there are lesser options or more affordable options in the Sorrento range, and you're going to get obviously, 85-90% of the experience if you do go for one of them anyway, including all the safety stuff. So that's good. But I think for the amount of money you pay for a top spec 7-seat large SUV, it's very well priced to begin with.
Yeah,
certainly cheaper than an equivalent CX-9 or even a new Kluger. But you get absolutely everything, and in most cases, I'd say more than you would get in other rival vehicles. So that's very
Interesting.
impressive. But just one more point I'd make on it as well is, again, this week I've got the V6 petrol front wheel drive. You can pay an extra $3,000 and get a diesel all-wheel drive if you want. I probably wouldn't bother because it'll take a fair while to make up the difference in cost at the pump. But
$3,000 buys a lot of fuel.
It does buy a lot of fuel, and like the fuel consumption on the V6 isn't particularly great. But again, for that $3,000 difference, unless you're going to be owning it for a very long time, then it might not necessarily be worth it in the short term.
Yeah. You might save some money on tyres, though.
Yes,
the fronts spin up nicely, don't they?
They do. If you stick the boot in, for sure. But what I would say is the thing that I'm looking forward to most in terms of the evolution of that Sorento story are the hybrid and plug-in hybrid versions that are coming out.
Great.
Yeah, those are the ones that if I was in the market, that's what I'd be waiting for and buying one of those two, because, you know, the V6 is all very well and good and the diesel's all very well and good, but the hybrids obviously you're going to get superior fuel efficiency and all that kind of stuff. So I think that'll be a very interesting and hopefully a really big winner in that segment.
Great. Good one. Thank you, Justin. And Peter, we'll move on to you, an entirely different type of vehicle that you have been driving. Fire away.
BMW 420i, the entry level for 71,900, the entry level grade of the new BMW 4 Series. Now, I'm a big fan of this car. I mean, I am a kind of a BMW guy, so I will put that out there. But when you see this car in the flesh, the horrifying photos that BMW's press office mandated had to go out across the world don't make it look as challenging.
Right.
Doing the photos, because I mean, when we're, I've spoken to a few people about it, and I couldn't put my finger on how this happened, but all of the photos are taken right down here.
Yep.
So
okay.
They look like
the grill is daunting. I get you.
Yeah, they look like they've just put a couple of Easter Island statues on the front
Moai,
of the car.
the Moai.
The Moai. So when you're there in front of it, it doesn't look that bad, and of course, it's got a beautiful profile, and the rear is very sleek. But you know what? It's a great car to drive, and it's based on the 3 Series, of course, which is a fantastic thing to drive these days.
Yep.
Just an overall improvement on the, by BMW standards, lackluster previous version. I love it. It's such a cool car. And the one I had was this really nice white with black M wheels. And to pick up on what you're saying before, James, about the M stuff, we get M Sport as standard on the 4 Series here.
Yeah.
So nobody buys BMWs without it, basically.
That's right. Yeah.
So, it was really nicely spec'd. It could do with a bit more safety gear. There's some of the stuff you kind of want to be standard. However, it did have the visibility package, which had, metallic paint, which is $1,600,
right?
Sunroof, whatever. But it had the laser lights, which are
amazing. Yes, they are amazing. Yes,
they are incredible.
Yeah, so, they have lasers. Yeah,
lasers.
It's just to take an opposing position.
This is an honest opposing position.
Look, I've been proven wrong in the past. The whole flame surfacing design approach from Chris Bangle back in the day, initially I thought was disastrous, and really there were people out there picketing the 4-cylinder building in Munich that they thought the whole company was being ruined. And I've got to say, some of those designs have aged brilliantly well, and they still look contemporary so many years down the track. So initially I was like, oh, wow, that's a misstep, but I think they've grown beautifully. I could be proven wrong in the same way. I've been told this grille is partially driven by demand in China, where, people want to make a brand statement, and the kidney grille is very much a signature element for BMW. So let's just make it whopping big. I just think it spoils the car. I think it's out of proportion, and the front of the car looks decidedly odd because of it. That's just my take. But I'm ready to be proven wrong over time, if it ages in a similar way.
It has the added advantage of extracting krill from the air as you drive along. But
I want to do a good job on the cooling because it's bigger.
Yeah, that's right. Well, actually, I was in a roundtable with M's engineering team, and after upsetting the styling lady a bit because she didn't quite understand the thrust of my question, which was, how do you prepare yourselves for bad kind of. And she goes, oh, we don't do it deliberately. I'm like, I know you don't.
No.
But I said to the engineers, so these massive grills, what do you think? And they're like, oh, they're fantastic. They're so good for cooling. So on the M cars And as you know, both the M3 sedan and the M4 coupe have this big schnoz. They love it. They absolutely love it. So there's actually a function to it, at least on the upper end. It's not going to need it on this 2-litre 4-cylinder. But it's swift. Yeah. It's got all the right things. It's got static BMW M suspension, which I thought was pretty much faultless around town and on the freeway. Yeah. So a beautifully sorted car. It is expensive. Could do with a little bit more stuff, but I would strongly recommend that if you can replace the Bridgestone tires, if you like your driving, replace the Bridgestone tires. They're just not as good.
Oh well, that's just an invitation to wear the OE tires out rapidly.
That's right.
Fine. Get rid of them that way. Yeah. Eminently doable. Yeah. All right, good. Thank you, Peter. It'd be great to get people's thoughts on the BMW 4 Series and the way it presents to the world, and see what people make of it.
Tell James he's wrong.
I've been here. That's right. I don't mind.
I'm on your side, Peter. So
are you? Okay, very good.
I'm a BMW guy as well. So
God, it's turning into, what is it? 12 Angry Men. Anyway, I've been driving something entirely different, which is the GWM. Make sure that's there. Ute Cannon L. So this has been some time coming, and finally it's here. So the L sits in the middle of the range. It's a 2-litre turbo diesel, 120 kilowatts, but 400 Newton meters, 8-speed auto. It's 4x4 model, but it's $37,990. It's just a touch under $38,000, and you get a heck of a lot of ute for that money. It's huge. It's 5.4 meters long. It's 1.9 meters high. It's 2 tons, which is actually less than I thought it was going to be. It'll tow 3 tons, which is a little under the norm. You'd probably want your 3.5. But again, people may have reservations about product coming out of China, but there's a 7-year warranty. And also, it's very well equipped. There's heaps of room because it's so big. It's just very spacious and commodious. It's also quite loud. It's not as refined as you might like it to be in the engine department. Also, the example that we've had recently, there was a very annoying squeak. It was like Crafty's bird in a cage, Tinky. There was just this coming from the seat. It's got an electric adjustable seat on the driver's side, which is great. Put it up just a couple of millimeters and that squeak disappeared. So it was something about where the seat was. I couldn't get the digital speedo to stay on. It wanted to change into a ranging graphic for you to the car ahead the whole time. Matt Campbell told me that's something to do with a speed threshold, and it's a bit of a problem. I found it intensely annoying. And the ride's a bit rough, unladen, and that's not, unusual for a ute. And Matt also told me to put 500 kegs in the back of it, and it's transformed. It's a vastly different car. But fact is, you're paying at least 10K more for an equivalent Hilux or Ranger, maybe even more than that. Yeah. So they've got a very compelling way into that market initially by pricing a well-equipped, enormous ute competitively. So I think it'll do well.
Given its name, does Cher come straddling the bonnet?
I don't know.
This is a joke for people of a very certain age.
Yeah, I think, was that the Missouri, or it might have been the New Jersey? I think that film clip was an Iowa-class battleship. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, what was
Justin's looking at us both going, how old are you two?
I'm just going to sit
here. I think it's Turn Back Time.
Turn Back Time is the track, yeah.
Certain people, that's burned in their memory. Okay, so there's that. And I think, initially, if you do want to put a dent in these well-established top-selling players, price is not a bad weapon in your arsenal. So if these can be brought to market at such a compelling price, they're going to find buyers. So over time, it'll be a different story. You do have to back it up with longevity, and that's a bit of an unknown quantity at this point. So we'll see how that goes. But a lot of ute for the money.
The one thing I'd say about the GWM Ute, though, which is quite interesting, is it's the first of those products to move away from the Great Wall branding. Obviously, they're looking to distance themselves from their past for several reasons, and going with GWM instead, which is obviously Great Wall Motors, just an acronym though. So that's quite fascinating. And even calling it the Ute, because overseas it's called the Cannon, but in Australia, Cannon is a variant name. And then you've got Cannon L, which you had, and then Cannon X. So it's the GWM Ute, and then Cannon anyway, rather as opposed to just being the Great Wall Cannon. So
it's an interesting comment, Justin. It puts me in mind of a certain fried chicken franchise who went from the full name to a 3-letter acronym, and also an electronics manufacturer out of South Korea that started life as Lucky Gold Star. Yes, miraculously became LG. Anyway, that's fantastic. We shall now move on to some feedback from last week. And last week's show was built on the proposition of, well, what are you going to replace your Falcon and Commodore with? The newest one you can buy, the most recent production is now getting on to replacement type age. It was a story Byron had written, and it brought some feedback. And Jared Rahman says, he thought it was a great question. And he adds that the Territory Commodore and Falcon had pure, honest design, but the world's changed, sadly. And he's looking for a car right now to replace local product. And he's saying there's nothing of real interest. He's right in the crosshairs of Byron's story, really. He's a person who's just going, I can't find anything to replace these cars. So I thought that was interesting that Byron had struck a chord there. And Bertie, our old mate Bertie, says, as an owner of a VF2 Redline Ute, I reckon the 580 Amarok is the closest I've driven to having the same in-the-seat feeling. Byron had put up the Ranger as a potential alternative because of its local development in similar fashion to, a Holden Ute. But Bertie reckons, no, not the Ranger. He'd be heading for an Amarok, which I thought was an interesting, and he's obviously driven one if he's got the in-the-seat feeling. And it's quite a performance Ute.
The 580's got the Walkinshaw local development.
Yeah.
So he's on the same philosophy as Byron there.
Exactly, yeah. Now, Marco VESS, who I still like to refer to as Marco Vess, because that's how his YouTube handle comes across, he says, the idea of replacing a Commodore SS with a Chrysler 300 is just laughable. What a backward step. He'll be hanging on to his VF2 SSV Redline for as long as possible and sees no suitable replacement for his VE SV6 Ute. So he's committed, obviously, and in this zone where he's got these cars and maybe replacement is on the horizon. However, in a sign of the times, what did I order a few weeks ago to sit alongside them? Tesla Model 3. How amazing is that?
That's quite a departure.
That is quite a departure. So Marco Vest, maybe you'll become Marco Tesla. That's quite extraordinary.
It's a good point, though, what he raises. And as a bit of a teaser this weekend, we have another story coming along similar lines to what Byron wrote a couple of weeks ago. But this one's from Stephen Otley, and it'll be talking about Falcon XR8 and Commodore SS specifically and what people might consider to replace those. And not to give the whole thing away, but obviously we know a mid-size SUV is increasingly the family car of choice. And then the future is obviously moving towards electric. So we're going to look at a couple of electric mid-size SUVs that are coming soon that might potentially be on the shopping list of, current or former XR8/SS buyers. And this sounds like a great example of someone that's gone out and got an electric car to replace their performance Australian sedan. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Well, even the lower, examples of a Model 3 are quick. They're a quick car.
5.6 seconds for a standard range plus to 100. That is on par with an SS of many, many, many generations. So
right.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Now, we also touched last week in MuskWatch on this very high-profile crash of a Tesla, allegedly with no one in the driver's seat in Texas. There are conflicting reports from police and others inside Tesla. And Adam Gill wasn't alone. He said, please check the meaning of autopilot.
Yes.
Autopilots do not replace human operators. So, yep, and Adam, I absolutely hear you. We get that. That in a technical sense, autopilot is not the set and forget, go off and do something else kind of thing. However, perception is reality. And probably Hollywood has a lot to answer for in terms of, what autopilot is in the public consciousness. So whatever it is technically, may not matter as much as what people actually believe it is. But Adam says, so unless you have an IQ of lower than 65 and can live, cook, go to the toilet on your own, I'm sure it won't matter what you call it. But I would disagree still. I think it does matter what you call it. And if you set up an expectation in some people's minds that it's going to be autopilot, which generally speaking means set and forget, it's a hands-off thing, I don't have to concentrate, I think that's pretty dangerous. But anyway, you're free, of course, to have an alternate point of view.
There is a subculture of fans who think that everything that comes out of that company or is spawned from the technical loins of our dear leader is faultless. And they think that if Elon says it's going to, and you know, I deal with these people on social media all the time. If you say anything against the great leader, boom, you are cooked. The Muscovites come for you.
Oh, totally. Hashtag not a cult.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the problem with calling it autopilot. They believe it and they won't hear a word against it. So.
Yeah.
Now, the very interestingly named Geo bloke said, I reckon hydrogen might be the go for sports cars as well. We were talking about heavy transport. We're talking about all kinds of applications because Tung had been driving the Toyota Mirai. Said it got everything we want, electric performance like an EV, unlimited range eventually, like an internal combustion engine, a lighter weight than EVs, and can be actually green. But he said also, Tung, who cares about what the exhaust tastes like? Because Tung actually did drink some water that it emitted from the Mirai's exhaust, or what I'm calling the exhaust. What does it sound like? So, I'm sure it sounds like an electric car because that's what it is. But yes, so Tung did take the plunge, pardon the pun, and drank. I know everyone thinks about it, but Tung went there.
Not surprised.
Then,
folks.
Last of all, I did mention last week that we, as a family, have bought a Corolla SX hybrid, and that the purchase process was a very positive one. I went incognito. It was my wife who bought the car and all of that. And I did mention that we paid full retail for the car. And Oz1 says, must be rich and naive to pay full list. Motoring journalism, LOL.
Right.
Well,
it's all that payola we get. Yeah.
I said, I think, have you been in the current new car market? We had to wait 3 months for that car. There's no real stock kicking around. It is very much a seller's market. And what I would say, by the way, naive is NAIVE, Oz1. People who can't spell, lol. So there's a bit of payback. But now, speaking of payback, it is time for MuskWatch. Right. So, first cab off the rank, Starlink. The Sydney Morning Herald has reported, quote, good news for internet users, Elon Musk's Starlink gets approval for satellites closer to Earth. So that means remote areas may be even better served by these low-orbiting satellites to provide a network of coverage for people wanting to get their internet up to speed, which is great. But to me, again, it's just like, oh, okay, how many more of these things are going to be out there? And I think it was something we actually investigated and discovered, but I'd forgotten from some time ago, that the authority that kind of gives you the big tick to go and do these things, just put things up in space, is the US Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. So they granted the permission for this to happen. And I'm thinking, well, that's good of you, but it's my space too. Yeah. What is this imperialism where you're determining that certain people can throw stuff up into space? Because remember, ultimately, Starlink the Muskaya wants to launch 12,000 satellites up into space. And it put me in mind of a story that I'd caught through the week where a Scottish company is now making its business on cleaning up space. That their estimate is there are 34,000 objects of a certain size. There's lots of micro bits and pieces out there. And they're going to make it their business to go out there and clean it up, clear debris, reposition satellites and remove redundant satellites from orbit. So maybe there is a bit of check and balance going on here. But to me, it's just like, wow, it's just do it until someone tells you not to.
Yeah. I mean, the Starlink thing, I have mixed feelings about, but it's a good thing. I know, you talk to people who live on the outskirts of even a pretty decent sized country town in Australia, and they can't get internet. It's mental. And for $120 a month, you're going to be able to get a very good quality, fast connection. But what I also think is going to be interesting about Starlink is how are places that are, shall we say, not very encouraging of the internet, going to stop people from getting themselves a Starlink modem and looking at the outside world?
Well, that's the other dear leader, isn't it? Really, in North Korea, yes.
Or even, the great Chinese firewall. Even in Thailand, if you want to look at the Wikipedia entry of Thai royalty, can't read it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
oh, wow. Yeah, okay. Well, it'll open up all kinds of questions there in terms of local regulation. That'll be more challenging. Yeah. Well, the other thing is, not surprisingly, he was on Twitter and tweeted during the week, the Doge Father. SNL, May 8. Yeah. So, believe it or not, he's going to be hosting SNL on May the 8th. In my opinion, could you find a less charismatic host? And Justin, you raised the point before the show that they had in fact had, or was it you, Peter? Sorry, had Donald Trump, but he has got some kind of strange, warped charisma about him. It'll be very interesting. Car crash. Yes, that's right. It'll be interesting to see how this show goes.
Just so happens that last weekend, one of the 10 digital things showed the Big Bang Theory episode with Musk in it. And my goodness.
He's a monotone kind of strange unit, isn't he? Anyway, but
screen presence hewn from solid oak.
In response to this, Dogecoin surged 20% on Wednesday from that tweet. And he's got, Elon has 52 million followers on Twitter, so he can shift things. And this crypto started off as a joke in 2013. Yeah. It now has a market cap of $50 billion. Yeah. And he's been on it. He's tweeted various things. He sent a flurry of tweets. In February, he just tweeted Doge. Then he followed Dogecoin is the people's crypto. And then no highs, no lows, only Doge. So people are prompting him on Twitter all the time, say something about Dogecoin because I want to make some money, blah, blah, blah. And he is on the cusp, according to Yahoo Finance, of being investigated for currency market manipulation, which to me seems pretty blatant. But anyway, and look, in response to that tweet, Alpha King said, how do I buy Dogecoin from Nigeria? Like, what? Nigeria has been the ground point zero of scams for as long as anyone can remember. And they want to get in. Natalie just says, you're so annoying. And Crypto Puppy says, seriously, man, stop messing with crypto markets. So there are people who are taking exception to this, even on Twitter, in following the dear leader.
This is the great thing about, you talk to the neckbeards who are full-on crypto fans. And, if you're into crypto, great, whatever. But they say, it's all about democratization of money and it keeps the elite out of our money. And then people like Elon Musk, who are billionaires, and billionaires are policy failures, let's face it, roll in and go, Doge. And they make a whole ton of money. And look at all the money he made on Bitcoin last month from the Tesla investment in Bitcoin.
That is a superb segue. Thank you very much, Peter, because the share price is actually down a bit. So it was $7.32 last week. It's down a bit under $40 to $6.94. And look, the Motley Fool's saying why Tesla isn't charging up the NASDAQ today. Isn't that a great pun? You've got to love a pun headline.
Very good. Yeah.
But Tesla produced, so they issued their first quarter results and had an earnings call. They produced more than 180,000 Model 3s and Model S units, delivered about 185,000 vehicles in the first 3 months of this year. Revenue was up 74% year on year, due largely to growth, not just in vehicles, but other parts of the business, the power storage and other bits and pieces. And the proportion of revenue coming from regulatory credits, which is always considered to be a big part of their profitability, actually decreased during the quarter. It was still there, but decreased. And they sold off 10% of their Bitcoin holding. But overall, the theory is that no one's wowed by these things anymore. There's no wow factor. It's just business as usual. So I'd say stand by for a big product announcement. There'll be something, another big dream, another big magical dream will be forthcoming in the very near future. Yeah.
And just a side note, Tesla's very hard work in reducing CO2 is probably been blown by the crypto investment.
Yeah, maybe.
Someone's done the numbers and they reckon it's pretty much wiped.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to work out what a rocket puts into the atmosphere as well.
Yeah,
it's liquid. It actually flies on liquid oxygen.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, could Tong drink that?
Probably.
Possibly. I mean, honestly, knowing him, he'd drink anything. So.
You can make tea with it because it's pretty hot.
Yeah, that's true. True. You'd want a good cup. All right. With that, I think we have reached the finish line. I want to say thank you, Justin.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Peter.
Oh, no problem.
And thanks to our digital whiz kid, crayon guru, and head of Show Me the Money, Mr. Pritchard, for his subtle yet powerful production techniques. Today, he's wearing a T-shirt saying, phew, all this being such a legend is quite tiring. LED glow pants and balloon shoes. Let us know your thoughts. You can find CarsGuide on Facebook and Instagram or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. If you're an Apple podcast listener, please rate and review us. It helps other people find the podcast. Remember, you can also watch us on YouTube. And if you are already, make sure you subscribe to the CarsGuide YouTube channel so you can stay on top of all our latest content. But before we go, last night, police arrested a man for using a straw to drink sulfuric acid and distilled water from batteries on display in a car accessory store. This morning, a police spokesperson confirmed the man was being charged.
Oh, no. Oh, no.